your name? Don't you play this game? You from another land, got you like it's contraband. Tell me what's your name? Don't you play this game? You from another land, got you like it's contraband.
What's up, guys? Keyshawn Uchiha here, back at you with another part 2 of Oten Universe video. This will be part 2 of What If Deku Was a Sinner. Now, I was about to do it on Sunday, about to do another video, but I looked at the likes and pretty much y'all beat the like goal of 50 or higher likes. So this will be part 2 of What If Deku Was a Sinner. Now I'm going to do a short recap, and we're going to get to the new parts. But let me give out the warning. This will be an 18X. This will contain blood, guts, heavy language, and a lot of stuff. You could say a lot of stuff that you could say a sinner. So if you, like I said, is a good noodle who does the holiness, that does the Bible every day, go to, Bible studies, church school and stuff, be a good noodle, righteous, I recommend not being on this video. But if you're, like me, a little bit in the gray, who don't see good and right, you don't see black and white, you only see the gray, then welcome aboard. This should be spicy. But anywho, let's get to the recap, and then we're just going to get to the pretty much new parts. Now, where we last was pretty much off, Deku have pretty much defeated all the seven deadly sins. Pride, gluttony, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, and lust. Pretty much gaining all their powers, and pretty much defeating Lucifer itself after getting stabbed by Excalibur, which Lucifer Grace was in it, and Deku's soul was not 100% pure corrupted yet. Pretty much fused together with Lucifer Grace, turning into a half demon, half angel, half archangel, and pretty much defeating Lucifer and shattering him into a lot of pieces. That would take billions and billions and billions to hear of, like, you could say billions, like a lot. Like, you let's say 10 billion, or more than that. Let's say 100 billion years for Lucifer to regain his full power to get Deku back. But pretty much after that, Deku pretty much touches this crystal. We're just going to say crystal. Went back to his body, pretty much gaining his same hair features like he had in Hell, and pretty much his body features and stuff, and having all the deadly sins powers and stuff, including Lucifer power and stuff, and destroying the base he was pretty much at with the pretty much the cult people, and pretty much destroying that place and escaping, while pretty much heading to his mom's house, heading back to his house to pretty much trying to go to his mom to try to fix things right, but realized his mom was there. So this is where he pretty much goes to Bakugo's house to pretty much get some clothing and to see Bakugo's mom and stuff, and pretty much finds a place to stay while Inko comes back. But while he was there, he pretty much, what happened, pretty much saw through Bakugo's mom desire, which she pretty much wanted to have some sex with him, which he pretty much gave her the dente, and pretty much nut of the sauce, and pretty much let her sleep and head back to the couch to watch TV. While that, Bakugo pretty much came in and saw Deku. So, that's pretty much a short recap. Let's get to the new parts. Now, pretty much after Bakugo says Deku, or Mizuku, pretty much this is where Deku pretty much looks at Bakugo and pretty much smiles and says, "Come have a seat." Which pretty much Bakugo is saying, "What are you doing here?" Which pretty much Deku says, "Oh, wow, I didn't know you had a temple problem." "Oh, yeah, I forgot, you always did have that. But anyways, why am I here?" Well, pretty much I don't know where I was at, but your mom pretty much came up, pretty much gave me the whole information that I was in a coma, and that I pretty much was missing. Your mom pretty much was kindly let me in, and pretty much gave me some clothes. Which pretty much Bakugo sees it's his clothes, and pretty much says, "She gave you my clothes, damn it?" Which pretty much Bakugo is getting mad, which Deku says, "Hey, quiet down. Your mom is sleeping," which Bakugo is saying, "Who the hell you tell me what to do?" Which this is where Deku eyes is turning red and saying, "I said shut the fuck up." Which pretty much this is where Bakugo shuts up and quietens down. Which Deku begins to start smiling, saying, "There you go. Now, come have a seat. Now." Which Bakugo begins to have a seat. Which he kind of is trying to resist, but now Deku's pretty much using his power on him to make Bakugo sit. Now this is where Deku wraps his arm around around Bakugo and begins to have a talk with him, having a conversation with Bakugo, which this is where Deku is laughing at the TV show as he's laughing, saying, "Wow, this is absolutely funny." Which this is where Bakugo is pretty much having a cold sweat and realize that Deku is dangerous. Well, he has a gut feeling that Deku is more powerful and you could say dangerous. This is where Bakugo's mom comes down and says, Deku, that was a really nice time we had. And she pretty much cuts herself off, which pretty much Bakugo says, nice time what? Which she's about to say something else. Deku says, oh, we had a nice time of pretty much playing cards. Which Bakugo says, cards. Which Deku says, yeah, we was playing some card game and I pretty much lost a couple matches and she won a couple matches. We was having a good time, which she was pretty much blushing and saying, yeah, we had that. Which she begins to start saying, I start cooking us some dinner while you wait for your mom to come here. And I pretty much texted her, which pretty much Deku says, oh, okay, great. We can have a meal. Just like old times. Now, pretty much this is where Bakugo's mom making some dinner. As she's making some dinner, this is where Deku pretty much is talking to Bakugo saying, if you tell her anything of what I did to you, I'll fuck you up and make you wish you never saw me today. Which pretty much this is where Bakugo does a good on his throat and pretty much keeps quiet of what Deku's doing right now. This is where she pretty much says dinner is ready, which Bakugo and Deku has a seat and begins to start eating. This is where Deku pretty much says, this food is delicious. Man, it's been quite, you could say, years since I had a good meal, which pretty much she says years, which pretty much Deku is saying, yeah, like, a proper meal. Since I was in coma, which she pretty much says, oh, yeah, of course. This is where she begins to start laughing, which Deku starts laughing too, which Bakugo thinks is something else, because why would Deku say that? But he pretty much is curious and suspicious of what does Deku mean by years, but he pretty much ignores it for now, and pretty much just gets a little ignores and looks away. This is why, as Deku is pretty much eating with them, this is where he pretty much is complimenting Bakugo's mom, saying this meal was most gracious and it's good. Which this is where Bakugo says, I had enough of this, and he pretty much goes upstairs saying he's gonna go in his room, which Deku says, can I come in? Which, can I come with? Which Bakugo says, hell no, and pretty much closes his door real loud. This is where, as Bakugo's mom is right now pretty much grabbing the dishes and pretty much this is where Bakugo's mom is doing the dishes and stuff. This is where Deku has like 3 more plates and pretty much eats the rest of the food and says, man, that meal was good. Which he pretty much gets up and he goes right behind Bakugo's mom and grabs her ass. Which this is where she pretty much says, Deku, which pretty much Deku begins to start smooching her neck and stuff and begins to give her a hickey. It says that meal was most scrumptious. And also you, which she begins to start doing a little laugh and saying stop, which pretty much Deku says, is his mom almost here yet? Which she pretty much says, yeah, she's pretty much coming anytime soon, which Deku pretty much is saying that they should hang out on the couch, which she pretty much stops Deku and says that what would they have to keep this a secret between his mom because of them and them pretty much doing it with each other, which Deku says it's perfectly fine. He will explain to his mom later, but for now, they can keep it a secret, which she pretty much says, oh, okay. Which Deku says, but first, come on the couch with me. Let's watch TV together, which she pretty much says, okay. Now, this is where Inko knocks on the door, and Deku pretty much gets in and says hello, which pretty much as he says hello, this is where he sees his mom. And his mom, like I said, has lost weight. Like, she got herself together, lost weight, but also she is also been working. So she's been working hard, and she has been spending her brain a lot. So she's not like any type, like her brain is that of that level. We're just gonna say she has an intelligent quirk, and she can have more memory space. She can unlock her brain up to like 99%. Well, 100%. But every time she does that, it pretty much takes away her weight. So as she uses her 100% brain, she has to eat a lot. So she has to eat a lot, and if she doesn't, she's gonna, die. You could say lose a lot of weight, turn into a skinny bone. You could say. Now this is where Deku looks at his mom and he says, "Mom," which pretty much this is where Inko, she looks at Deku and says, "Deku, is that really you?" Which pretty much she begins to start crying. Which Deku says, "Yeah, it's me, Mom." And she begins to start running to Deku and hugging him and said that she missed him so much. She thought he would never come out the coma. She started asking him question where he was at, which Deku begins to start talking to his mom and saying, and he begins to start telling her the honest truth, saying, "Can we talk quietly?" Now, this is where pretty much Deku explains to her that after he got shot at the party, he pretty much his soul went to hell, which she was shocked to hear the truth about Deku. This is where Deku explains everything and how he was getting tortured for 1,000 years, and then he pretty much met this Sin Nun, and is basically this Sinner Church, and basically this is where he got strong and basically fought demons and stuff, and basically just went out all hell to pretty much get back to his body. This is where he pretty much explained that the moment he woke up at this weird facility place where it got destroyed, and he was the only one you could say alive, and he pretty much just escaped and came to try to find his mom. Which this is where Inko was pretty much shocked to hear Deku and hearing that all that happened to him, and she begins to say, "Well, that doesn't matter. I'm just glad that you're back." Which Deku pretty much hugs his mom and glad that he's back too. Now this is gonna be the school. We're gonna pretty much hold off of the school thing. So, I mean, yeah, we're gonna have Deku going to school before we start the whole entrance exam and all that. So this is where Deku pretty much is home, and Inko pretty much is saying that, asking him if he's hungry or anything, which Deku says nah, he's pretty much fine, but he does say he can go for like a good uh cherry pie, which Inko, that's his favorite like dessert, cherry pie, because Inko knows how to make it, and she says she make it for him right away, which Deku says she can take her time. He's just gonna go in his room and rest for a bit. Which this is where, as he's going to his room, he begins to create a satanic cross. I mean circle, a satanic circle. As he's creating it, this is where he pretty much opens up the hell portal. A small hell portal. As he does that, this is where he reaches his hand out and begins to grab someone out of it. Now, who is he grabbing out? Well, I'll pretty much just tell you. This is where he pretty much pulls out the Sinner Nun, and he pretty much pulls out the princess, a princess of a medieval time. Now, as he does that, this is where the princess, she pretty much sees Deku, and she runs and says, "Deku, you actually saved me, my prince," which pretty much, Deku pretty much hugs her and says, "Yeah, I promise I will get you out of hell," which she pretty much is happy that Deku kept his promise and wasn't like cold-hearted. This is where the Sinner Nun also says, "I see you brought me back too," which pretty much Deku says, "Yeah, you actually the one who got me out of hell by telling me what I have to do, so I had to pay back a debt." But she pretty much says, agreed. But I think I should be going now. May we meet each other again? Which pretty much Deku says, yeah. But she pretty much heads off, which before she heads off, she asks the princess will she likes to come with her. Which pretty much the princess says that, yeah. But before she goes, she pretty much kisses Deku on the lips and says that they will meet again. And the princess from a medieval age, which I will tell you who is the princess later on. But for now, we're just going to continue the story. And they pretty much go off on their own, teleporting. Now, as that's happening, this is where Deku hears a call from Inko saying that to come downstairs. The pie is ready, which Deku says he's going to come. and he pretty much starts heading. Now, after that, the next day, Deku pretty much starts getting dressed and heading to the school. Now, as he's heading to the... Sorry about that, I was just getting information of the food is ready, but let's continue. Pretty much the next day, pretty much Deku is getting dressed, and he doesn't dress up in high school uniform. He pretty much dressed up in his own style, with pretty much of a jacket, not a long straight jacket like Dante's, but pretty much a blue jean, a black jean jacket with fur on the neck, you could say. And pretty much he wears black jeans with black jeans with a cross, and has a golden chain belt on the side. He has also boots with fur inside to have comfortable. Now, this is where Deku pretty much has the golden collar on his neck, and he begins to start leaving, saying he's going to school. Which Inko says, okay, be careful and make sure to call her when he gets there, or text her to let her know that he got there safe. Which Deku says he's fine, and he's gonna let her know. Now, this is where Deku is pretty much heading, and as he's walking to the school, he pretty much sees Bakugo, and he says, "Oh, hey, Kashan." Which Bakugo begins to look away at Deku and begins to start walking away fast. This is where Deku catch up with him and saying, "Wait up, Kashan. Why are you going so fast?" Which Bakugo says, "Can you get off of me? You acting like we're friends." Which pretty much Deku says, "What do you mean, Kashan? We've been childhood friends ever since we was little." Well, until you pretty much changed up on me. Which Bakugo says, "What is that supposed to mean?" Which this is where Deku is, you could say, using the power that he kind of doesn't know that he is using the power, but at the same time it's weird. But he pretty much says, well, the guilt of bullying me and stuff. Which pretty much Bakugo says, what? Which pretty much Deku begins to start smiling, and his eyes begins to start turning like unique red like gold, you could say. Like crimson red gold, you could say. Like mixing color. This is where Deku pretty much look at Bakugo's eyes, and he begins to start having Bakugo walk with him, and he begins to say, well, don't you remember? After you got a quirk, and I didn't have a quirk, you begin to start bullying me like hell. You start saying how useless and weak I was, and I would never become the top hero. Hell, you said, if I'm so weak, I should just go kill myself. Which Bakugo is trying to say that it's not true, but this is actually Bakugo's truth and guilt. That Deku can see right through him. You could say Deku can see right through him and his guilt and stuff. This is where Deku begins to start saying, also, the whole me changing, leaving high school, leaving the school, smoking, doing drugs, cutting myself. At all that time, you could have changed and said, hey, don't do that. What are you doing? Fix yourself together. But yet, you never did. Which this is where Bakugo is feeling the guilt ways, like the sins crawl on his back. Like Deku's actually making the sins crawl on his back. And Bakugo's getting goosebumps and stuff. This is where Deku begins to start saying, come on, Kanchan. Why are you feeling so guilty? Why are you feeling so quiet? Is it because it's all true? Even when I got shut up, not a day and once you never came to come visit me. Because you knew this was a part of your fault. Which this is where Bakugo begins about to cry until Deku says, but that's all in the past. Am I right, Kanchan? Shall we get going? Which this is where Deku begins to start walking to the school. Which Bakugo is pretty much crying and saying and breathing all hard. Because Deku pretty much was speaking out pure facts of truth of what Bakugo did to him and treated his life like hell. And Bakugo has nothing to say about it. And this is where Bakugo looks down and begins to start clenching his fists and saying, damn it. Which he pretty much knows it's all true. Now, let's get going. Next day, this is where pretty much, not the next day, sorry. This is where Deku's pretty much at the school. And this is where everybody sees it's Deku. And Deku looks much different. Like his hair is still green. But he has a different aura. He looks much different and stuff. And this is where, as Dex is about to go to his desk, this is where he sees his desk is pretty much have like all these words on it saying "Go kill yourself, die, worthless, loser." Like it has all that stuff like that. This is where Deku pretty much begins to start touching his desk, and he pretty much turns his desk into silver and gold, and his chair too. And he pretty much sits down, and put his feet up and saying, "Ah, much better." But he still leaves the words on the desk like "die, go kill yourself," and all that, and pretty much, which everybody is like shocked that Deku turned the desk into silver and gold. This is where this is where one pretty much boy guy walks up to Deku and says, "Holy shit, Deku! I didn't know you can do that." Which this is where Deku looks at him and says, "Oh, yeah, I didn't know I can do that too." Which pretty much Deku's talking sarcastically. Which this is where two other girls, which we're gonna say these are popular girls, are saying, "Can you turn my phone to gold and stuff?" Like they're asking for favors and stuff. Which Deku looks at them and says, "Can I? Should I?" Which pretty much they begin to say what? Which Deku gives a smile and says, "Should I really do it? Because y'all was kind of assholes and dicks to me. Why y'all trying to be friends with me now and buddy buddy?" Which Deku is pretty much speaking truth to them. This is where they begin to look down, and one bully says, "What, you think you're better to us just because you can turn shit to gold?" Which this is where Deku stands up and says, "Better? No. I don't think I'm better than you. But if you think I'm better than you, then yeah, I guess I am." This is where one student throws a punch right at Deku's face. And as that punch goes in Deku's face, this is where the bully pretty much starts screaming and saying, "Oh, my hand!" Which Deku starts saying, "What's wrong? You hurt yourself?" Which pretty much, Deku pretty much half of his face, pretty much as the bully is holding his hand, and this is where Deku pretty much creates ice, and he begins to start saying, "Oh, look like you hurt your hand. I wonder how." Which pretty much all the bullies and kids are shocked that this they don't know what happened and how he hurt his hand, because they clearly saw he punched Deku in the face, but they don't know what happened. This is where one of the other bullies grabs a chair, and using his quirk, he can pretty much harden anything and make it into like metal, and pretty much he slams it down on Deku back. This is where as he does it, it has no effect on Deku, and Deku begins to turn around saying, "Wow, did you just hit me with a chair, an iron chair?" Which the bully is looking and realize the iron chair is like bent. And this is where Deku pretty much looks at the bully and saying, "Wow, I am shocked. Y'all will go this far to hurt someone just because the person was rejecting to give you something? How ungrateful." Which pretty much Deku was talking like that. As the bully is pretty much scared of what Deku's going to do to him, this is where the teacher pretty much comes in and says, "What is going on here?" Which pretty much the bullies begins to start saying, Deku is pretty much bullying us and stuff, and he hurt the other person's hand, which pretty much the teacher looks at Deku and says, Mizuku Midoriya, did you actually do all this?" Which Deku looks at him and starts smiling, saying, "Did I? Nah, I didn't do that." Which pretty much, as the teacher's about to yell at him, this is where I'm going to say a nerd girl with glasses, she pretty much says, "No, it's true, and I pretty much saw the whole thing." Which this is where the bullies look at the girl, and they pretty much look at her with disgust. Which the teacher says, "Two of y'all come with me, Deku. I got my eye on you." Which Deku says, "My pleasure. You can come check this out any day." Which pretty much the teacher gets a little pissed off, but he says whatever, and pretty much grabs the other boy students. Now, this is where the girl pretty much puts her head down as that's happening. And this is where we go to lunchtime. Now, as lunchtime happening, this is where Deku walks up to the girl. Well, no, this is where Deku is pretty much sleeping, and he's just slumped. Now, as Deku is pretty much slumping, this is where everybody else who's around his radius is tired too, and half of them begins to start falling asleep while a couple of them are fighting to sleep, and they're continuing doing their own thing or eating, or pretty much are eating, saying this food is actually delicious, and they don't know why. They pretty much eat this every day, but they don't know why it's so delicious, and they want more. As that's happening, this is where the girl pretty much is walking to Deku, and she's pretty much saying, well, pretty much quietly saying, excuse me, which pretty much Deku is opening up his eyes and he looks right at her and says, yes, do you need anything? Which pretty much she offers him some food, which Deku looks at her and he pretty much says, are you offering me some food? Which the girl with glasses, she's pretty much blushing and saying, yeah. Which this is where Deku says, okay. Which he says, okay. He accepts her offer and he begins to start eating food. Now, as he's eating her food, this is where he pretty much says, this could go with some seasoning and stuff on it. Which he begins to start summoning some seasoning and stuff, putting a little bit of stuff on it. And he pretty much gets an egg. He summons an egg and crack it on the rice. And he already has the rice, like the egg fall on the rice, but it's like immediately cooked real quick. And he begins to start eating and saying, wow, this is good. Especially with the egg, which she is shocked that Deku was doing this. This is where Deku thanks her for the meal, and pretty much, and this is where Deku asks her a question and asks, why did she pretty much do it? Like, pretty much helped him out with the situation. She begins to look down and pretty much says that she just did it out of her kindness, which Deku knows that's a lie, and pretty much asks her why did she really do it, and she begins to start telling the truth and start saying that she had a crush on him a couple years back when they was kids, and as they grew older, her feelings grew more and more for him and all that. Which pretty much this is where Deku begins to start looking at her more, and this girl pretty much is, like acts pretty much is looking down a little bit. This is where Deku asks for her name, and this is where she pretty much says her name is Toga, which Deku says, huh, so your name is Toga, which this is where Deku can see right through her, and he can also see her personality change, of her psycho tendency, of wanting blood and stuff, but he sees it's faint. It's not big, but it's faint. But she pretty much says, okay, Toga. Well, my name is Mizuki Midori, or you can just call me Deku. I think we can be great friends, and maybe more. Which she begins to start blushing and saying more, which Deku says, yeah, you could say that. Which this is where she asks, what do you mean by maybe more? Which Deku says, and he pretty much kisses her in front of the whole class, which all the class people, including the Popper girls, are shocked and they're saying what? Which Deku is like French kissing her, like he's going down in the throat, and she begins to start blushing and passes out. As she passes out, this is where Deku says, "Oh, you alright?" Which he pretty much just creates a pillow and have covers and pretty much just leaves her at his desk and pretty much says, "Well, I gotta go. I gotta go and go outside to go for a smoke." Which he pretty much gets a pack and pretty much starts going up all the way upstairs and stuff to have a smoke. Now, as that's happening, he's pretty much smoking stuff, and as he's smoking, this is where the group of boys pretty much got another group of boys, and pretty much they're saying, "You're taking it pretty funny, Deku, for what you did and embarrassing me." Which Deku looks, and as he's smoking, he's saying, "Oh, what I did to you? Oh no, I don't think it was pretty funny. I think it was hilarious." Which pretty much he's saying, "Bastard, you know how many people are on is over here? It's about 20 of us, and you're about to get an ass whooping of your life. You better beg on your knees and start begging, or you're going to get a beating." Which Deku looks at them and he says, "Yeah, I don't beg, and I don't think y'all misheard of the situation. Y'all gonna get your ass beat, not me." Which pretty much this is where the bullies and all of them start coming and trying to fight Deku. This is where one starts coming at Deku, and Deku pretty much just backstabbing him, sending him flying. send him flying, but not off the roof because sends him flying to the fence because the roof has a fence. So he pretty much hits the fence and pretty much hits the ground. This is where the other group of boys start charging at Deku, and Deku begins to start smiling and saying, "Well, let's get this party started." And he begins to start kicking their ass. He does a kick to another one, knees the other one in the face. Pretty much he headbutts the other one, and this is where he summons silver knuckle dusters and start punching the shit out of all the other bullies. And this is where he pretty much grabs the other one and headbutt the other one, it turning his forehead into gold. So he pretty much doubles the damage. Now, as he's doing that, he's pretty much just having fun beating the shit out of all of them. Now, this is where the bully who summoned all of them and injured his hand is pretty much scared and on the ground saying, wait, I didn't mean which. Deku pretty much kicks him right in his face and have him fall on the ground. As he have him fall on the ground, this is where Deku is pretty much punching the shit out of him senselessly with the golden knuckle dusters. Now, as he's doing it, he's pretty much having like a couple teeth come out the student, and he begins to start having him cough up a lot of blood. As that happens, this is where Deku pretty much punches him in the gut and makes him bleed out, cough up blood and saliva, and he pretty much has him on the ground. And this is where he pretty much has the student fingers right there, and he begins to start saying, "Well, I got sick and tired of y'all bullies bullying me a lot, and just because I came back doesn't mean y'all have a new status. So I think there should be a new king, and I think it should be me because I'm getting sick and tired of y'all acting like y'all own shit and y'all the world and y'all kings of this world. Because in reality, y'all nothing and y'all throne are fake." Now, as that happened, this is where the student begins to start begging for mercy and said he's promised he's gonna stop doing it. He won't bully anyone. All the bullies will stop. Which pretty much Deku says, no. You see, I know when you're lying and telling the truth, and you're bullshitting. After I spare y'all just gonna get a more bigger gang from another school, or pay, or have the bullies association to have more bullies to come at me, and then I'm gonna have to fuck them up and eventually kill one of y'all. So we're just gonna skip that subject, and I'm just gonna start breaking fingers until I see you tell the truth to me. Which this is where Deku grabs one of the fingers and he breaks it, which the kid starts screaming in pain. Which, as he's doing that, this is where Deku says, "Now that's one. Now if you scream louder, I'm gonna break another one." Which pretty much this is Deku grabs another finger, he breaks it, which the kids scream, and Deku does it again, which he screams again, and this is where Deku is pretty much smiling and saying, "Should I break this last one, or are you gonna promise me you're gonna stop, and I'm gonna have the king, which have the crown?" Which pretty much this is where the bully is barely uncautious and saying, yes, he promised he would not do anything, he won't get no one to hurt him, he won't have no one to betray him, which Deku says, "Good. Now that's an understanding. I should break the last one." And he pretty much breaks the last one, having him to scream and pass out. Now, as that happened, this is where pretty much Deku gets up and he pretty much starts patting himself, cleaning himself off, and getting half of the blood off of him, like pretty much absorbing it. And he begins to start heading out, and he pretty much throws a cigarette onto the ground and steps on it and starts heading back. As he's heading back, this is where a person was watching him, and this person was Toga. Now, as she pretty much saw Toga, as Toga pretty much saw Deku and absolutely shitting on everybody, she's pretty much shocked, but also she feels somewhat of excitement from it. And as she feels somewhat excitement of it, she's trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with her. And this is Toga before she is crazy and a yandere, you could say. So this is her pretty much is shocked, but as she's shocked, she pretty much walk up to one of the bullies' blood and touches it. And as she tastes it, she pretty much gets all the experiences and memories and stuff, and realized that one of the bullies was kind of a pedo, not a pedo. You could say kind of a rapist. Well, a sex offender. Yeah, and she pretty much says, "Serve you right, piece of shit," and she pretty much just walks away. Which, as she walks away, this is where Deku opens up the door and he looks around for it, and he pretty much sees that she's not at his seat no more, he begins to say, "Hey, where did she go? The girl with the glasses," which pretty much all the proper girls saying they don't know. She probably went to go cry in the bathroom, which pretty much Deku says, "Cry about what?" Which she pretty much says, "Oh, nothing," which pretty much Deku smiles and says, "That's what I thought." For reward for not saying it all the way and not having balls, I should grant you something. Ask what you want. Which pretty much she asked for $100, which Deku says, greedy. I grant it. Which pretty much he gives her $100, which she's incitement, and pretty much Deku gives the other girls $100 and tells them to go fuck off, which they start to go. Now, as that happened, Deku goes back to his seat and goes back to sleep, and we just continue it going. Now, the next day, this is where we start getting to the entrance exam and stuff. I mean, the 2 months of training, you could say. And this is where the teacher comes in and basically asks, who wants to become a hero, which everybody, he pretty much says everybody, which everybody's saying, except for Deku, he's sleep. He's like sleep. Now, I know what you're asking. Is Deku going to be a smart Deku who does writing, who observes heroes and stuff and writes down what their quirks and how can they do better with the quirks and the suit design and all that shit? Alright, to be honest with you, Deku is extremely smart. His IQ is that of Iron Armistice. Like, he's extremely intelligent. So, he's like so intelligent that he can read lips and know when you're lying and not lying. So that's how intelligent he is. He can pretty much read minds, and he can see through the future. Even with NV power. Basically, yeah. And plus, with all the students' quirks, he has been collecting a lot of useless quirks, but he also been collecting useful quirks. So, yeah. But pretty much, this is where the teachers start checking out the names of who wants to become a hero. And as he's checking out who is signing up for the Hero Academy, this is where he pretty much sees there's only 2 people. And this is pretty much, he sees that it is Bakugo and Mizuki Midoriya, or Deku, you could say. This is where all the students looks at Deku, and Deku is pretty much sleeping. And as he's sleeping, he's saying, turkey. And as he says it, pretty much people hears him says it, and they begin to start laughing and stuff, and saying, and pretty much some of them have their doubts, but some of them says that Deku do have a quirk, so he could become a hero. Which some of them are saying, like, that clown can become a hero. But Deku, he's asleep. Although he can hear them, he doesn't hear. He's asleep. Now, as that's happening, this is where everybody begins to start going and heading out. This is where Deku begins to start grabbing his book. And he only has one book, and it's the book he had before he left the school and not want to return. He pretty much grabs it and puts it in his side pocket. And he pretty much, and it's like a small book. So he pretty much puts it in his side pocket, and he begins to start grabbing his other book, which this is where Bakugo gets cocky. And he begins to grab Deku book and blows it up. Which Bakugo saying, "You think you can become a hero?" Which this is where Deku looks at him, and he says, "Bakugo." But he pretty much says, "Kashan, do you know you just burned my book? You know you're gonna have to buy me a new one, right?" Which this is where, as Bakugo says, "Yeah, right, like I have to buy you one." Which this is where Deku says, "Alright, meet me up top in the rooftop." Which pretty much this is where Bakugo says, "Alright, whatever, loser." Which all the other bullies are saying, Don't fight him. I promise you, you're gonna get your ass beat badly." Which this is where Bakugo says, "I don't know why y'all being pussies, but I'm gonna teach him who's the boss." Which, as that happens, after school, this is before after school. This is, before after school. Before everybody's leaving, Deku pretty much stops. Shit, I forgot her name. Ito? No, Uraka. Hold on. Yeah, this is where Deku meets up with Toga before heading up onto the rooftop, and he pretty much talks to Toga and says, So, Toga, do you want to go out? Which, this is where Toga begins to start blushing a little bit, and she says, go out with you, which, this is where this is where Deku smiles and says, yeah, like a date. Are you not available? Which she pretty much says, oh, no, 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 I'm available. Uh, what place you want to meet at? Which pretty much Deku says, pretty much afternoon, if you're available, which she says, yeah. And this is where Deku says, okay. And they pretty much says it's a date, and but they say at the same time, which Deku pretty much smiles and she blushes a little bit, but he says see you later, and Deku starts heading up to the rooftop. Now, as Toga's leaving, this is where whew, this is where Deku begins to start heading upstairs, and he meets up with Bakugo. Now, as he's meeting up with Bakugo, this is where Deku says, now, I'm only going to tell you this once, Kanchan. Pay for my book that you burnt, or I kick your ass miserably and might have to do more worse to you. I don't want to do this to you, best friend. Which, pretty much as Deku saying that, Bakugo says, yeah, right, like you're going to do shit to me. And they begin to start having a fight. Now, this is where Bakugo's throwing explosions at Deku, and Deku is pretty much dodging the explosions left and right. Because, like, I'm pretty much going to say this. With pretty much Wrath, I switched it up. Wrath has the ability to like I said, the motions. Basically, if he gets angry, he gets more stronger. But he also has control over the other motions too. So as he's like happy, he can pretty much dodge attacks much quickly, and like quickly he can dodge attacks like Ultra Instinct, you could say. Sadness, he can also debuff everybody defense and stuff, and also nullify quirks when he's sad, and so forth, so forth. So, or if he's like scared, he can pretty much put scaredness on everybody else, and he doesn't have to be scared. So yeah, he can pretty much do that. And if someone show emotion like fear or anger, it would just power up Deku. So just wanted to put that as a short note. But as that's happening, pretty much Bakugo is throwing explosion at Deku and throwing fists at Deku. Deku pretty much is just dodging and smiling, saying, "What's wrong, Kashan? You seems like you can't catch me." Which pretty much Bakugo is getting pissed off and says, "Shut up!" And he's throwing an explosion at Deku. This is where, as he throws one more explosion at Deku, this is where Deku pretty much grabs Bakugo and pretty much slams it to the ground, holding his arm. As he's holding his arm, this is where Deku has him on the submission hold, where he can break his arm and saying, now, Bakugo, I have you at a position where I can break your arm. Which pretty much, this is where Bakugo says, screw you, which this is where Deku says, come on, just say you pay for the book, and I promise you I will not break your arm and have to do this over and over again to you. Which pretty much, this is where Bakugo says he ain't paying for shit, which this is where Deku says, alright, if you say so. And he pretty much breaks Bakugo's arm, which pretty much he creates a bubble barrier, well, a barrier, a round circle barrier of glass, soundproof glass, which no one can hear. And Bakugo is just screaming in pain. This is where Deku repairs Bakugo's arm again and replace it, and he pretty much keeps breaking it, which Bakugo is screaming in agonizing pain and screaming louder and louder. As that's happening, Deku begins to start smiling even more, and his eyes is pretty much glowing. This is where Bakugo looks at Deku, and Deku's pretty much smiling as he's healing his arm and saying, are you going to pay for it? Are you going to do it? Which pretty much Bakugo is about to say something until Deku breaks his arm again, and Bakugo starts screaming in agonizing pain. This is where Deku says, like I said, I can tell when you're lying, so don't lie to me, and just promise me that you're going to buy me a new book. Kanshan, which pretty much Bakugo is pretty much is can't say anything because he's about to go unconscious. This is where Deku pretty much before healing his arm back up, he breaks one of Bakugo's finger, bringing him back to consciousness and bringing him back and having Bakugo scream again. Which this is where Deku says, "Now, don't go unconscious on me now, Kashan. Are you going to pay for a new book for me?" Which pretty much is where Bakugo is pretty much nodding yes and say he will do it. Which this is where Deku says, Good. I guess I'll repair you now." Which he pretty much fixed Bakugo's arm and replaced it and heals back up. As Bakugo's about to leave, this is where Deku pretty much stops him and says, "Oh yeah, and if you say anything to your mom about this, I will make sure you never walk again." Which pretty much is where Bakugo is in fear and understands and starts leaving. As that's happening, this is where Deku pretty much starts jumping down the building and pretty much lands on his feet, which half of the students saw him do it and saying, "Holy shit," which Deku begins to start walking off saying, "I gotta get ready for my date," which pretty much he's just saying he's gonna buy flowers and head to the place soon. Well, he's gonna go to the arcade and buy some flowers and head to the place soon. Now, as that happening, this is where Deku takes the shortcut to the bridge. And as he's taking a shortcut to the bridge, this is where the Sludge villain comes and attacks Deku. And as he goes and wrap around Deku's body, this is where Deku pretty much is looking at the Sludge villain. And the Sludge villain is wrapping himself around Deku and covering him up all the way, saying, "Haha, this body's mine, kid." Now, as that's happening, Deku is pretty much smiling, saying, "Look like you're dead." Which the Sludge villain is saying, "What?" And Deku begins to start turning the Sludge villain's body into pure like pure ice, and begins to freeze the Sludge villain. Now, as he frees the Sludge villain, he pretty much breaks the Sludge villain into pieces, into ice. Well, yeah, frees him into ice and breaks him off of him, and saying, "Hmm, you know, I'm not really quite satisfied." Now, this is where Deku pretty much brings the Sludge villain back to life, and he pretty much starts to bring the Sludge villain back to life and turns the Sludge villain into a human, which the Sludge villain is pretty much realizing that he's back into a human body. Now, as he realizes he's back into his human body, which Deku fixes his body, Deku begins to shoot lava and a ice arrow straight through each leg of the Sludge villain, which the Sludge villain begins to start screaming in agonizing pain. As that's happening, Deku he pretty much falls on his knees, and Deku pretty much saying, "Oh, you thought you was going to just leave after getting your body fixed? No, there's a debt you're gonna have to pay for trying to steal my body, and we're gonna do this until you, let's say, submit." Which the Sludge villain is too much in pain because the lava and ice arrows both affect him, and they're just destroying his nerves and making it more painful. As that happened, this is where as All Might's looking for the Sludge villain, he hears screams and stuff, and All Might begins to start heading that way. As he's heading that way, this is where pretty much Deku gets done and heals the Sludge villain back up, and the Sludge villain begins to start heading to the corner and starts crawling in the corner and saying, "Get away from me! Don't hurt me! I'm sorry." Which pretty much Deku begins to start looking at the Sludge villain with horns, and he pretty much has his halo and pretty much says, "Oh, so you're sorry, huh? Do you really mean it?" Which pretty much the Sludge villain is saying, "Yes, I mean it. Please forgive me." Which Deku can see he's telling the truth, and he begins to say, "I thought you would be lying to me. Oh well." Which pretty much this is where All Might comes in and says, "I am here." Which Deku looks at All Might and says, "Oh shit, it's All Might." Which All Might looks at Deku and says, "Uh, what is going on here?" Which pretty much the Sludge villain is saying, I'm the Sludge villain. I'm the Sludge villain. You see, look." Which the Sludge villain begins to start turning his hand into a sludge and turning it back. Which All Might is seeing the fear in his eyes and saying, I go away. I go to jail. I go to prison. Just take me. Get me away from him. Get me away from that kid." Which pretty much Deku looks at him, looks at both of them, and pretty much Deku looks in confusion and saying, "Hmm." But Deku begins to start smiling, which All Might begins to start saying, "Okay." And this is where All Might pretty much just tie up the Sludge villain and pretty much just says that he deal with him in a second to stay right there, which the Sludge villain is obedient. He stays still and pretty much is just like in a corner, you could say, or far away from Deku. As that's happening, this is where All Might pretty much looks at Deku and asks, "What did he do?" Which Deku says, "Oh, he did nothing particular. He just shot him with 2 arrows in the knees, and that's pretty much it." Which All Might saying, "Oh, that's it? So why is he cowering in fear and afraid?" Which All Might's curious about it. Which Deku says, "Oh, he has, when he shoots someone with it, he can create fear from his bow, which the bow, when it hits someone, it creates fear to make them terrified of him and stuff." Which All Might understands and says, "Wow, that's quite amazing, kid." Which Deku says, "Yeah." Which this is where All Might asks Deku would he likes to autograph, which Deku says, yeah, he would like to. He would like to have it, which this is where this is where pretty much All Might gives Deku an autograph and pretty much starts heading out. And Deku doesn't grab him because, like I said, Deku's a sinner, and he's not pure-hearted, you could say. So he's like he's in the gray, you could say. Chaotic neutral. You could say he's in the chaotic neutral way. But pretty much after that, this is where Deku pretty much shoot the Sludge villain with insanity to make the Sludge villain go insane. So that's going to be an important reason why. But as Deku's pretty much heading off on his own and heading to the place to get flowers and roses after just being in the arcade, this is where he hears a bunch of explosion, and this is the Sludge villain pretty much attacking a person. And the one person is Bakugo, and Bakugo's pretty much is screaming out for help. And the Sludge villain, what he's basically doing right now is trying to kill Bakugo. He's not trying to take the body, he's just trying to kill him. And this is where, as the Sludge villain has a person and basically saying, make it stop, make all the voices stop and stuff, which pretty much All Might can't do anything because he pretty much went debuff Small Might for him, so he pretty much can't do anything to try to stop him. And all the heroes don't have a quirk to pretty much help out. This is where Deku says, I just wanted him to be insane, not go crazy and try to kill my best friend, Kanshan. Which pretty much this is where Deku says, alright, I guess I do something about it. Now, as that's happening, this is where the Sludge villain is pretty much is insane. But this is where he sees Deku again, and he begins to start freaking the fuck out, saying, "Get away from me! Get the fuck away from me, you monster! You devil! You demon!" Which pretty much, as he's saying that to Deku, Deku begins to start smiling and saying, "Oh, what?" Which pretty much this is where the Sludge villain is talking crazy at the same time, saying, or I kill this kid, which pretty much Bakugo is looking at Deku, and Bakugo is reaching out for Deku help, which this is where Deku looks at Bakugo and says, alright, I guess you can't be helped, which pretty much this is where Deku snaps his finger, and he starts disintegrating the Sludge villain. Now, as he's disintegrating the Sludge villain, this is the Sludge villain just getting wiped away in an instant, basically just turning into nothing. As Bakugo drops down on his knees, this is where pretty much Deku begins to start getting up and walks away, saying, this was exhausting. And pretty much everybody's going to Deku and, praising him and stuff. But Bakugo is not saying anything, just looking down. Now, as Bakugo is looking down, this is where Deku is pretty much walking and stuff. And the only people who notice who saved the kid, actually, and who deserve the praise is actually All Might and Bakugo, you could say. Now, as that's happening, and another person who saw Deku do that is pretty much off one, and he's pretty much saying interesting. Now, as that's happening, this is where Deku is pretty much walking off on his own, and as he's walking off, this is where All Might pretty much looks at Deku and asks him, will he want his quirk? Will he like his quirk? Which, this is where Deku looks at him and starts to say, what do you mean your quirk? Which pretty much he asks him, will he like to be his successor? Which Deku starts to think about it and says, your successor to become the number one hero. Which, as Deku's thinking about it, he says, okay, I accept it. Which pretty much this is where All Might says, okay. And he pretty much says to meet him at the beach tomorrow. They're going to start their 2 months of training to get him prepared so he can eat you could say, have his quirk. Which pretty much Deku says, alright. And he starts pretty much, before he starts going, this is where All Might says, let me check your physical body. Which Deku shows him the physical body and says, look like you've been tripped, kid. Alright, I guess I'll give you my quirk right now. I'm going to give you my hair. Which Deku says, whoa, I gotta eat your hair? That's weird. Which pretty much All Might explains that once he eat it, he will get his quirk and become the next successor. Which Deku thinks about it and says, alright, but this better not be no weirdness. Which All Might begins to start laughing and saying, nothing weird. Don't worry, it's no weirdness about it. Which Deku eats the hair, and begins to saying that he has to go to Hibi going now, and he will meet him at the beach. Which All Might agrees and start heading off. Before Deku begins to start heading off, this is where Bakugo stops him, and Bakugo says that he he didn't need his saving, which Deku looks at him and smiles and says, "Don't lie to yourself. You knew you was about to die. I know you was about to die. If I didn't stop that sludge villain, you'd be a dead piece of meat. And that sludge villain would have just took over your body and had a new body." Which pretty much Bakugo looks down and Deku says, "Well, I'll be going now." And this is where Bakugo gets mad and starts creating an explosion. And as he's about to throw an explosion, this is where Deku stops him and says, "Bakugo, if you throw that explosion at me, I'm gonna just throw a bigger explosion at you. I have your power." Which Bakugo says, "What?" Which this is where Bakugo gets pissed off and says, "Stop bullshitting," and throws an explosion at Deku. This is where Deku turns around and says, "You idiot!" And he pretty much throws a bigger explosion of Bakugo's same quirk and sending him flying back and hurting Bakugo a little bit. This is where Deku says, "I warned you," which he starts walking away, but before he walks away, he heals up Bakugo and starts walking away. Now, after that day, well, after you could say afternoon, this is where Deku pretty much meets up in the date of the location of Toga. And before he gets to the date, this is where he sees a girl getting harassed by a guy. And this is where he sees Toga. And pretty much this is a guy who pretty much is, we'll say, a guy who's like strong quirk user who can harden his body and stuff. This is where he's pretty much holding Toga up and he begins to start ripping her shirt apart. Well, start unbuttoning her shirt. And he begins to start saying, "Huh, you accidentally spilled a drink on my lap, and which it burns. I think you should pay with your body," which pretty much she's pretty much crying and saying, "Don't do this," which this is where Deku walks up to the group of guys who pretty much have Toga in that corner, and Deku starts walking saying, "Wow, look at y'all. Y'all think y'all big and tough just because of one simple misunderstanding. And y'all think y'all have power of just doing this to a girl," which this is where one of the you could say crooks are saying, "Who the hell are you, kid?" Which pretty much Deku punched him right in his chest and shattered his whole ribcage, his whole skeletal front lobe, which the guy hits the ground and starts coughing up blood and falls on his ground unconscious. As he's on the ground unconscious and bleeding out, coughing up a lot of blood, blood coming out his mouth. This is where Deku walks up closer to the other guy, and the other guy's saying, "You little witch." Deku pretty much says, "Snap your own neck," which pretty much the guy snaps his neck and kills himself. As the other guy is holding down Toga, he begins to let go and says, "Huh, you think you're good by just killing two of my lackeys? I'm different, kid," which pretty much he throws a punch at Deku. As he throws a punch at Deku, this is where, as he throws a punch at Deku's face, his arm begins to turn into ice, and his arm pretty much shatters, like kabus, which he loses his arm and he begins to start screaming in pain. As he's screaming in pain, this is where Deku pretty much creates a golden bat, and he pretty much breaks one of the guy's legs. And as he breaks one of the guy's legs, this is where he pretty much hands the bat to Toga, saying, "You want to get revenge?" Which pretty much, at first, she hesitant, but this is where she does the psychopath turning point and all that. And she pretty much grabs the bat and begins to start smiling and beating the shit out of the guy. And it's a wire spike bat too, so she's just wailing on the shit out of him. And Deku's also notifying his quirk, so he can't harden himself up to endorse the pain. No, that shit is hurting badly. After Toga having a lot of blood on her, and pretty much the bat is pretty much covered in blood. This is where Deku pretty much is asking her if she's okay, which she begins to start saying yeah, and looking now, which Deku pretty much lifts up her shin and begins to start kissing her and saying that everything's gonna be okay. The cops not gonna find out that they pretty much just mass killed all three guys. Well, I killed all three guys, and she pretty much fine. So shall they go on the date? Which pretty much she smiles at him and says yeah, and they begins to start hitting off on their date. Now, this is part 2 of What If Deku Was a Sinner. If you like, let's get this up to. So I do the same thing again. 30 likes, 30 likes will lead, well, yeah, 30 likes will lead up to, actually no, 20 likes will lead up to a next part to the video on Tuesday, and 50 likes will lead up to our automatic next video today. I mean, to a next part to today, okay? So 50 likes for another part today, and 20 likes will be for Tuesday, okay? But I'm Keyshawn Chia. Thanks for watching, and peace out.
It looks like you lost another one.